Today, we're cracking open a new bill in South Carolina that could totally change how your windshield gets fixed, who gets paid for it, and, most importantly, who really has the power to choose. You might think the choice is yours. You get a crack in your windshield, you file a claim, you pick the shop. Simple, right? Well, it turns out the system isn't always as clear as fresh glass. In fact, it's got some pretty serious cracks of its own. So let's get right into it. To really see why this new bill is such a big deal, we first have to understand what's broken with the current system. It's pretty clear that South Carolina's auto glass law is way overdue for an update. For years and years now, independent auto glass shops, the local guys, they've been documenting this really frustrating pattern. They argue that the big insurers and their partners basically run the whole claims process. They steer you away from local businesses and toward their own shops, and often they end up underpaying for the work. Okay, so how does this actually play out? To really get it, you need to know who's on the other end of the line when you call to file that claim. It might not be who you think. So you call the number on your insurance card for that cracked windshield, but you're often not even talking to your insurer. Nope. You're talking to what's called a third-party administrator, or a TPA. It's a totally separate company hired to handle all the details of your claim. And here, my friends, is the heart of the problem. A huge conflict of interest. See, a company like Safe Flight Group, for example, acts as a TPA, managing claims for major insurance companies. But they also own a massive national chain of auto glass shops. They're basically the referee and one of the star players in the same game. This setup gives them an incredible amount of power. They can use their position as the claims handler to funnel all that insurance work right into their own stores. This effectively squeezes out the independent competition and lets them control the pricing for everyone. All right, so in response to all of this, a new bill is on the table in South Carolina, and it's designed specifically to modernize the law, plug these loopholes, and bring some much-needed balance back to the market. Now, the goal here isn't anything crazy. It's all about common sense reform. It's about creating a fair and transparent system where your right to choose is protected, where your car gets repaired safely by a qualified shop, and where small businesses get a level playing field. So how does the bill actually pull this off? Well, it attacks the problem with 5 very specific, targeted fixes that are meant to build a whole new, more transparent framework. First, as you can see, it flat out prohibits steering customers to certain shops. Then, it demands full disclosure about who owns what. Third, it sets up a system for fair pay based on real market prices. It also requires safety accreditation for any shop doing insurance work. And finally, it closes those huge loopholes that let this whole system exist in the first place. Let's zoom in on one of the absolute biggest changes: how shops get paid. Right now, insurers can kind of just set a rate based on a single national pricing guide. But this new bill says nope. Reimbursement has to reflect the prevailing competitive market rates, what shops are actually charging in your local area, based on real-world data. That is a massive shift. And there's more. The bill also forces the person on the phone to tell you if their company owns the shop they're recommending. And this is huge for modern cars. It mandates that crucial safety system recalibrations, for things like automatic braking, have to follow the car manufacturer's exact procedures. Plus, only nationally accredited shops can get paid by insurance. Of course, a law is only just words on paper if you can't enforce it. And that's where this proposal adds some serious muscle that has been missing for a long, long time. Yeah, we're not talking about a little slap on the wrist. The bill proposes a minimum fine of $10,000 for every single violation. That's a penalty meant to be a real deterrent, not just a line item in a budget. To make it all work, the bill creates a special enforcement fund paid for by small fees from everyone involved. It says individuals who knowingly break the rules can be held personally responsible. And this is a game changer. It gives you, the consumer, the power to sue a company directly if they violate your rights. But this whole reform isn't just about what's happening in South Carolina. It's about taking a stand and maybe, just maybe, setting a new, higher standard for consumer protection for the entire country. See, a national group recently adopted a model for this kind of law, but critics said it was basically written by the big corporations and was pretty weak. South Carolina's bill is different. It actually includes the stronger consumer protections that advocates were fighting for, and it directly closes the loopholes that the national model left wide open. When it comes down to it,
This isn't about punishing anybody. It's about creating a system that's balanced and works for everyone. You, the consumer, get safety and a real choice. Independent shops get a fair shot. Insurers get clear, consistent rules. And regulators finally get the tools they need to actually do their job.
And that really says it all, doesn't it? The supporters here argue that the whole goal is to bring integrity and trust back to the auto glass market, making sure the focus is where it should be, on safe repairs and your rights as a consumer. By backing small businesses, protecting consumers' rights, and putting public safety first, South Carolina's proposed bill is making a really bold statement. The question it leaves us with is whether this one state's push for a fair system can become the blueprint for the rest of the nation.